In the misty dawn of Langstone Manor, a scream shatters the silence. Lady Evelyn Warrender, a dazzling socialite, lies strangled in her locked aviary, surrounded by exotic birds. The door is sealed, the key inside, yet no one entered, no one escaped. Hercule Poirot steps into a web of secrets, a grieving husband facing ruin, a nervous maid hiding truths, a charming guest with a shadowy motive. As clues unravel, a silk cord, a trained macaw, a duplicate key, Poirot reveals a chilling truth. The killer used the aviary's own birds to weave a perfect crime. But no cage can hold the brilliance of Hercule Poirot. Dive into the Gilded Cage, where love, greed, and betrayal collide in a locked-room mystery that will leave you breathless. Chapter 1. The aviary at dawn, the morning mist clung to the rolling lawns of Langstone Manor, a grand estate nestled in the heart of Sussex, its grey stone facade softened by ivy and time. Hercule Poirot, immaculate in his tailored overcoat and polished shoes, stepped from the chauffeured car, his cane tapping lightly on the gravel drive. The air carried a sharp chill, and the sky, a delicate shade of pewter, promised rain. At the ornate iron gates, Inspector Japp awaited, his weathered face set in a scowl that betrayed both frustration and unease. "Poirot, you're a sight for sore eyes," Japp said, his voice gruff as he shook the detective's hand. "This one's a proper puzzle. Lady Evelyn Warrender, found dead in her aviary. Strangled, no less, in a locked room. Not a soul in or out, far as we can tell." Poirot's meticulously groomed moustache gave the faintest quiver, a sign of his piqued curiosity. "A locked room, mon ami. That is a challenge most delectable. Lead on, if you please." They crossed the manicured gardens, passing rose beds and a marble fountain, until they reached the aviary, a magnificent structure of wrought iron and glass, its dome catching the weak morning light like a jewel. Inside, a symphony of colour and sound greeted them, parrots with plumage of emerald and crimson, a sleek white cockatoo preening on a perch, and smaller birds darting in flashes of sapphire and gold. The air was thick with the scent of feathers and earth, undercut by a faint, metallic tang. At the centre of the tiled floor lay Lady Evelyn Warrender, her body crumpled like a discarded marionette. Her emerald silk gown, elegant and unrumpled, contrasted starkly with the grim scene. A thin silk cord, intricately woven with threads of gold, was knotted tightly around her slender neck. Her face, once renowned for its porcelain beauty, was frozen in an expression of startled dismay, her sapphire eyes wide and unseeing. Beside her, a crystal champagne flute lay shattered, its contents pooling on the tiles. Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved fingers hovering over the cord without touching it. "Curieux," he murmured, noting the cord's unusual craftsmanship. Delicate, almost decorative, yet lethal in its purpose. His keen eyes swept the scene, cataloguing every detail: the single brass key in the aviary's lock, the faint scratch on the doorframe, barely perceptible, and a single feather, vibrant blue, caught in a crack of the tiles near Lady Evelyn's hand. "Sir Reginald Warrender found her just after 6 this morning," Japp said, consulting his notebook. "He's the husband, owns this pile, says he used his own key to get in, found her like this. Claims she often came out here at night to tend her birds." Poirot rose, brushing imaginary dust from his knees. "And this key, Inspector, it was in the lock when he entered." "Exactly so. The original, he says. He keeps a duplicate for himself." Poirot's gaze lingered on the lock, a sturdy but unremarkable mechanism. Most interesting. And the birds, Inspector. What do we know of them? Japp shrugged, his coat rustling. Exotic lot. Cost a fortune, I'd wager. Lady Evelyn was mad for them. Spent half her days in here, talking to them like they were her children. Poirot approached a scarlet macaw perched nearby, its black eyes glinting with intelligence. It tilted its head, letting out a sharp squawk that echoed in the glass enclosure. "Bonjour, petit oiseau," Poirot said softly, almost as if expecting a reply. "You have witnessed something, have you not? A secret, perhaps, hidden in these wings." Japp snorted. "You and your fancies, Poirot. Birds don't talk, not in any way that helps us." "Do they not, mon ami?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. In the hands of Hercule Poirot, even the silent may speak. He turned back to the body, his mind already arranging the facts like pieces of a mosaic. The locked door, the cord, the feather, the champagne, each a clue, each a thread in the tapestry of murder. "This is no crime of passion," he said at last, his voice low. "It is calculated, precise. The mind behind it is one of order and desperation." Japp raised an eyebrow. "You've got a theory already?" "Not a theory, Inspector. Merely an observation. The little grey cells. They begin to stir." Poirot's eyes gleamed as he surveyed the aviary once more. "Now, let us meet this husband who unlocks doors and finds tragedy. There is much to learn at Langton Manor." Chapter 2. The Grieving Husband. The drawing-room of Langton Manor was a study in opulence, its walls adorned with gilded wallpaper and portraits of stern-faced Warrenders gazing down from their mahogany frames. A crystal chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting prisms of light across the room, though the heavy velvet drapes were half drawn, lending a sombre air to the scene. A fire crackled in the marble hearth, its warmth doing little to dispel the chill that seemed to linger in the wake of Lady Evelyn's death. Hercule Poirot, seated in a high-backed chair, adjusted his cuffs with meticulous care, his sharp green eyes fixed on the man before him. Captain Hastings, ever the loyal companion, stood by the window, his hands clasped behind his back, observing the proceedings with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Inspector Japp, notebook in hand, paced near the fireplace, his boots scuffing softly against the Persian rug. Sir Reginald Warrender sat slumped in an armchair, his broad shoulders hunched as if bearing an invisible weight. A man in his mid-50s, he was impeccably dressed in a tailored morning coat, though his cravat was slightly askew, a rare lapse for a man known for his fastidiousness. His face, handsome in a weathered way, was pale, and his grey eyes were rimmed with red, suggesting either sleeplessness or tears. In his right hand he clutched a brandy glass, the amber liquid untouched, its surface trembling faintly with the shaking of his fingers. The silence in the room was broken only by the ticking of a grandfather clock and the occasional pop of the fire. Poirot tilted his head, his voice soft but piercing. "Sir Reginald, permit me to offer my condolences. The loss of Lady Evelyn, it is a tragedy most profound. But if you will, recount for Hercule Poirot the events of this morning. Every detail. It is of importance." Sir Reginald's gaze flickered to the floor, then back to Poirot. "There's little to tell, Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice low and strained. "I woke at 5:30, as is my custom. Evelyn wasn't in her room. She often rose early to visit the aviary. I thought nothing of it. But when she didn't return by 6, I grew concerned. I took my key, went to the aviary, and—" He paused, swallowing hard. I found her there, on the floor. That cord around her neck. I tried to rouse her, but she was gone. Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on the arm of his chair, a rhythmic motion that betrayed the rapid workings of his mind. And this key, Sir Reginald, the duplicate you mentioned to Inspector Japp. You always carry it with you. Yes, Reginald replied, reaching into his waistcoat pocket to produce a small, brass key, identical to the one found in the aviary's lock. Evelyn kept the original. She was particular about the aviary. Didn't like anyone entering without her permission. But I had this made years ago, in case of emergencies. Poirot's eyes narrowed, though his expression remained courteous. Most prudent. And last night, when did you last see your wife alive? Reginald's grip on the glass tightened. At dinner. We entertained a guest, Mr. Victor Duval, a Frenchman dealing in rare birds. Evelyn was in high spirits, charming as always. Afterward, she said she wanted to check on her birds. I urged her to come to bed, but she insisted on staying in the aviary. She often did, you know. Said the birds calmed her. Calmed her, Poirot repeated, his tone musing. And yet, Sir Reginald, a woman so calm meets a violent end. Tell me, were you and Lady Evelyn, how shall I say, in harmony? Reginald's jaw clenched, a fleeting shadow crossing his face. We were married 20 years, Monsieur Poirot. No marriage is without its storms. Evelyn was spirited. We had our differences, but I loved her deeply. Hastings, still by the window, shifted uncomfortably. He leaned toward Poirot and whispered, He's awfully shaken, don't you think? Seems genuine enough. Poirot's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. The heart, mon ami. It is a stage where many performances are given. We must discern the actor from the truth. Japp, who had been scribbling in his notebook, looked up. Sir Reginald, you mentioned this Duval chap. Any reason he'd have a grudge against your wife? None that I know of, Reginald said quickly. He's a business associate, here to discuss importing a new pair of macaws. Evelyn took an interest in his work. She loved anything to do with her birds. Poirot leaned forward, his voice smooth as velvet. And these differences you speak of, Sir Reginald, were they recent? Perhaps concerning matters? Financial? Reginald's eyes flashed with something, anger, perhaps, or fear. What are you implying, Monsieur Poirot? Evelyn and I discussed our affairs privately. Yes, her family's money built this estate, but I've managed it well. We wanted for nothing. Indeed, Poirot said, his tone neutral, and yet the whispers of divorce, they reach even the ears of Hercule Poirot. Such a step, it would be costly, no? Reginald stood abruptly, the brandy glass clattering onto the side table. This is intolerable. My wife is dead, and you sit here accusing me of what, exactly? I won't stand for it. Japp stepped forward, his voice firm. Now, Sir Reginald, no one's accusing anyone. Monsieur Poirot's just doing his job. Sit down, please. Reginald sank back into his chair, his hands covering his face. Forgive me, he muttered. It's all too much. I can't bear to think of her like that. Poirot's expression softened, but his eyes remained sharp. Your grief, it is understood. But the truth, Sir Reginald, it is a light that must shine, even in the darkest corners. Tell me, did anyone else have access to the aviary last night? No one, Reginald said firmly. The staff know better than to intrude. Clara, the maid, brought Evelyn her champagne around 9, but that was all. The aviary was Evelyn's sanctuary. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. "And this Clara, she is reliable." "Utterly," Reginald said. "She's been with us for years. Devoted to Evelyn." The room fell silent again, save for the clock's relentless ticking. Poirot rose, his movements precise, and adjusted his lapel. "Merci, Sir Reginald. You have been most helpful. For now, I will trouble you no further." As they left the drawing-room, Japp muttered to Poirot, "He's hiding something, isn't he? All that bluster about love and devotion. It's a bit too perfect." Poirot's lips curved slightly. "The performance, Inspector. It is polished, but not flawless. The tremor in his hand, the pause before he speaks of divorce, these are the cracks in the facade. But we must also consider the others, the maid, the guest, and the birds." Hastings, trailing behind, frowned. "The birds, Poirot? Surely you don't think they had a wing in this?" Poirot chuckled softly. "Not a hand, Hastings, but perhaps a role. The aviary, it is not merely a setting, it is a stage, and every stage has its secrets." They made their way to the corridor, where a housemaid directed them to the servants' quarters to speak with Clara Dobbs. The manor's grandeur gave way to plainer surroundings, bare walls, linoleum floors, the faint smell of polish lingering in the air. Clara was waiting in the servants' hall, a small, wiry woman in her late 20s, her dark hair pinned tightly beneath her cap. Her hands twisted in her apron, and her eyes darted nervously as Poirot approached. "Mademoiselle Dobbs," Poirot began, his tone gentle, but probing. "You were the last to see Lady Evelyn alive, I understand. Tell me of this moment." Clara's fingers tightened on her apron. "It was around 9, sir. I brought her a glass of champagne, as she asked. She was in the aviary, fussing over her birds. She seemed happy, like always. I left the glass on the table and went back to the kitchen." Poirot's gaze was steady, unyielding. "And you noticed nothing unusual? No visitors? No sounds?" "Nothing, sir," Clara said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It was quiet, except for the birds. They were squawking, as they do." Poirot produced a sketch of the silk cord, holding it up. "This cord, mademoiselle, it is familiar to you." Clara's eyes widened, and she took a step back. It looks like the one from the aviary curtains. Used to tie them back. But I swear, I never touched it." Poirot's smile was reassuring, but his eyes missed nothing. The flush in her cheeks, the way her hands trembled. "Of course, mademoiselle. You are loyal to your mistress, yes?" Clara nodded vigorously. "Oh, yes, sir. Lady Evelyn was kind to me. Always gave me a smile, even when she was cross with others." "And with Sir Reginald?" Poirot pressed. "Was she often cross?" Clara hesitated, her lips parting as if to speak, then closing again. "I don't like to speak ill, sir. They had their rows, like any couple, but she never said much to me about it." Poirot nodded, dismissing her with a polite bow. As she hurried away, Hastings whispered, "She's scared stiff, Poirot. Knows more than she's letting on, I'd bet." "Précisément," Poirot replied, his voice low. "The maid, she is a thread in this tapestry. But whether she is woven into the crime, or merely entangled, we shall see." They returned to the main house, where Japp was, waiting with a fresh report. "Got a bit more on this Duval fellow," he said, flipping through his notebook. "Arrived 2 days ago, staying in the guest wing. Says he was in his room by 10, but a gardener saw him near the aviary around that time. Claims he was just taking a stroll." Poirot's eyebrows rose. "A stroll in the dark near the scene of a murder? Most curious. We must speak with Monsieur Duval. His presence, it is no coincidence." As they moved towards the library to meet the Frenchman, Poirot's mind was a whirl of details. The cord's intricate weave, the duplicate key, the maid's fear, the husband's grief. Each was a piece of the puzzle, but the picture remained elusive. The aviary, with its vibrant birds and locked door, held the key to the mystery. He was certain of it. But how and why? In the library, Victor Duval awaited, a man of about 40, with a charming smile and a flamboyant cravat of scarlet silk. He rose as they entered, extending a hand. "Monsieur Poirot, an honor. I have heard of your reputation." Poirot inclined his head, his expression unreadable. "And I, Monsieur Duval, have heard of your proximity to the aviary last night. Perhaps you will enlighten us." Duval's smile faltered, but he recovered quickly. "A misunderstanding, I assure you. I was restless, took a walk in the gardens. The aviary's lights were on. Lady Evelyn was inside, I presume. I saw nothing amiss." Poirot's fingers tapped his cane. "And your business here? It is solely birds." "Indeed," Duval said, his tone smooth. "Sir Reginald sought my expertise in acquiring rare species. Lady Evelyn shared his passion. A tragic loss." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "The birds, they are trainable, no? Capable of unusual tasks." Duval laughed, a touch too loudly. "You jest, Monsieur Poirot. They are clever, yes, but hardly assassins." Outside, Hastings muttered, "Slippery as an eel, that one." "I don't trust him a bit." "Nor I," Poirot said softly. "But it is not trust we seek, Hastings. It is truth. And the truth, it lies in the aviary, among the feathers and the shadows." The trio paused in the corridor, the weight of the case settling over them. Poirot's mind was already turning, arranging the facts like cards in a game of patience. Sir Reginald's grief, Clara's fear, Duval's evasions, each was a clue, but none yet revealed the hand that had tightened the cord around Lady Evelyn's throat. The day was young, and the manor held its secrets tightly. But Hercule Poirot was not a man to be deterred by locked doors or hidden truths. Chapter 3. The Maid's Tale. The servants' hall at Langstone Manor was a stark contrast to the grandeur of the main house. Its walls were bare, save for a faded print of a hunting scene, and the air carried the faint scent of carbolic soap and boiled cabbage. A long oak table, worn smooth by years of use, dominated the room, flanked by mismatched chairs. A single window, its panes slightly warped, let in a sliver of grey morning light, casting shadows across the linoleum floor. Hercule Poirot stood near the table, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his posture as erect as ever. Captain Hastings hovered near the door, his brow furrowed, while Inspector Japp leaned against the wall, flipping through his notebook with a restless energy. Clara Dobbs, the maid, stood before them, her thin frame rigid with tension. She was a woman of no more than 28, her dark hair pinned tightly beneath a starched cap, her grey eyes darting nervously from Poirot to the floor. Her hands, red from scrubbing, twisted the hem of her apron into tight knots, betraying an anxiety she could not conceal. The silence in the room was heavy, broken only by the distant clatter of pots from the kitchen and the soft cooing of a pigeon outside the window. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was gentle but precise, like a surgeon's scalpel. "Mademoiselle Dobbs, you have served Lady Evelyn faithfully, yes? A trusted confidant, perhaps, in a house of many secrets. Tell me, if you please, of your movements last night. Leave nothing out, for even the smallest detail may illuminate the truth. Clara swallowed, her throat bobbing visibly. I was in the kitchen most of the evening, sir, she began, her voice barely above a whisper. There was a dinner for Mr. Duval, the French gentleman. I helped cook serve the meal. Roast pheasant, potatoes and such. After, I cleared the plates and was washing up when Lady Evelyn rang for me. She wanted her champagne, like she often did when she went to the aviary. I took a glass out to her around 9 o'clock. Poirot's eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, fixed on her. And how did Lady Evelyn seem when you saw her? Was she, as Sir Reginald claims, in high spirits? Clara hesitated, her fingers tightening on her apron. She was herself, sir, smiling, talking to her birds. She had a way with them, you know, could make even the shy ones sing. She thanked me for the champagne and told me to leave the glass on the table by the door. I did as she asked, and went back to the kitchen. Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching slightly. And you saw no one else near the aviary? No footsteps, no voices? The night? It was quiet? Yes, sir, Clara said quickly, too quickly. Just the birds, squawking as always. I didn't linger. I had work to finish, polishing the silver for breakfast. Japp glanced up from his notebook, his tone gruff. You're sure about the time, Miss Dobbs? 9 o'clock, you say? No one else was about? Clara nodded, her eyes fixed on the floor. No one, sir. The other staff were in their quarters or the kitchen. Mr. Duval had gone to his room, and Sir Reginald was in his study, far as I know. Poirot stepped closer, his voice softening, almost coaxing. Mademoiselle, you are nervous, no? It is natural, in the presence of death. But the truth, it is a balm to the conscience. This cord. He produced a sketch of the murder weapon, its intricate golden threads meticulously rendered. You said it resembles the one from the aviary curtains. You are certain? Clara's breath caught, and she took a step back, her back brushing against the table. It looks like it, sir. The curtains in the aviary have cords to tie them back. Silk, with gold threads woven in. But I swear I never touched it. I only noticed it when I cleaned the aviary last week. Poirot's gaze did not waver. And who else, mademoiselle, had access to these curtains? The other servants, perhaps? Or Sir Reginald? Clara's eyes widened, and she shook her head vigorously. No one but Lady Evelyn and Sir Reginald went in there much, sir. The aviary was her place. She didn't like us meddling with her birds, except to sweep the floor or bring her things. Hastings, unable to stay silent, leaned forward. But you must have seen something, Miss Dobbs. A woman doesn't just strangle herself in a locked room. Was there anyone lingering about the gardens? That Duval fellow, maybe? Clara's cheeks flushed, and she glanced at Hastings, then away. I told you, sir. I saw no one. I was in the kitchen after I left the aviary. I didn't go near the gardens. Poirot raised a hand, silencing Hastings. Merci, mademoiselle. One final question. Lady Evelyn, she confided in you, perhaps. Spoke of her troubles, her plans. Clara's lips parted, then closed, as if wrestling with a thought. She was kind, sir. Sometimes she'd talk about the birds, or the parties she went to in London. But personal matters? She kept those to herself. Only once. She trailed off, biting her lip. Once? Poirot prompted, his tone encouraging but firm. Speak, mademoiselle. The smallest word may be the key to justice. Clara's voice dropped to a whisper. A few weeks ago she seemed out of sorts, said something about wanting to be free, like her birds. I didn't think much of it. She was always fanciful. But she looked sad. Poirot nodded, his expression unreadable. Merci, Mademoiselle Dobbs. You have been most helpful. You may go, but remain in the house, s'il vous plaît. Clara curtsied awkwardly and hurried from the room, her footsteps echoing down the corridor. The moment she was gone, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. She's hiding something, Poirot. Did you see how she jumped when you showed her the cord? And that bit about Lady Evelyn wanting to be free? Sounds like trouble in paradise, if you ask me. Japp snorted, closing his notebook. She's scared, all right. Probably knows more than she's letting on. But whether it's about the murder or something else, I can't say. What's your take, Poirot? Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, a rhythmic tick that betrayed the churning of his little grey cells. The maid. She is a mirror, reflecting the truths of this house, but only in fragments. Her fear, it is not merely of the police or of death, it is personal, specific. She knows something of the cord, perhaps of its use. But whether she is complicit or merely a witness, that remains to be seen. Hastings frowned, crossing his arms. You think she's protecting someone? Sir Reginald, maybe? Or even Duval? Poirot's smile was enigmatic. The heart of a servant, Hastings. It is loyal. But to whom? To Lady Evelyn, to Sir Reginald, or to her own secrets? We must observe, we must listen. The aviary. It holds the answers. But the maid, she is a thread we must follow. Japp scratched his chin, his eyes narrowing. I've got men searching the grounds and the aviary again. But so far, nothing. No footprints, no signs of a struggle. Just that blasted cord and a locked door. If Clara's not talking, we'll need to lean on the others. This Duval fellow, for one. He's too smooth by half. Poirot nodded, his gaze drifting to the window, where the grey sky seemed to press against the glass. Oui, Inspector. Monsieur Duval, he is a man of charm. But charm, it is often a mask. We shall speak with him next, and we shall see what lies beneath. As they left the servants' hall, Poirot's mind was already at work, piecing together the fragments of the morning's revelations. Clara's nervousness, her fleeting mention of Lady Evelyn's desire for freedom, the cord's origin in the aviary, all were clues, small but significant. The manor, with its polished surfaces and hidden tensions, was a labyrinth, and the aviary was its heart. Somewhere within its glass walls, among the fluttering wings and sharp beaks, lay the truth of Lady Evelyn's death. And Hercule Poirot, with his unerring instinct for order, would find it. They stepped into the corridor, the air cooler now, carrying the faint scent of rain. The library, where Victor Duval awaited, was their next destination. Poirot's steps were measured, his expression serene. But his eyes burned with the quiet intensity of a man who saw not just the world before him, but the shadows it concealed. Chapter 4. The guest from abroad, the library of Langston Manor, exuded an air of faded grandeur, its high ceilings adorned with intricate plasterwork, and its walls lined with shelves of leather-bound volumes, their spines embossed with gold. A heavy oak desk stood at one end, cluttered with papers and an inkstand, while a pair of deep armchairs flanked a low table set with a silver coffee service. The room smelled of old books and beeswax polish, mingled with the faint aroma of freshly brewed coffee. A tall window overlooked the gardens, where the grey sky had begun to release a fine drizzle, veiling the distant aviary in mist. Hercule Poirot entered with his characteristic precision, his polished shoes silent on the thick Aubusson carpet. Captain Hastings followed, his expression wary, while Inspector Japp brought up the rear, his notebook tucked under his arm, his eyes scanning the room with a policeman's suspicion. Victor Duval lounged in one of the armchairs, a man of striking presence despite the sombre occasion. In his early 40s, he had the lean build of a fencer, with dark hair swept back from a high forehead and eyes that gleamed with a blend of amusement and calculation. His scarlet cravat, a bold splash of colour against his charcoal suit, seemed almost defiant in the muted atmosphere of the manor. He rose as Poirot approached, offering a bow that was just a touch too theatrical. "Monsieur Poirot," Duval said, his French accent smooth as velvet, "it is an honour to meet the great detective. I have heard much of your exploits. And Captain Hastings, Inspector Japp. Gentlemen, please be seated." He gestured to the chairs with a flourish, as if hosting a salon rather than facing a murder inquiry. Poirot settled into an armchair, his posture impeccable, his cane resting lightly across his knees. "Monsieur Duval, the honour is mine. But we are here on a matter most grave. Lady Evelyn Warrender, she is dead, and you, I understand, were among the last to see her alive. Tell me, if you please, of your evening." Duval resumed his seat, crossing one leg over the other with studied ease. "A tragedy, truly," he said, his tone appropriately solemn, though his eyes remained sharp. "I dined with Sir Reginald and Lady Evelyn last night. Pheasant, quite excellent. We discussed my business, the importation of rare birds for their collection. Lady Evelyn was charming, as always, full of questions about my work. After dinner, I retired to my room around 9:30. I was weary from travel, and saw no one until this morning's dreadful news." Poirot's fingers tapped lightly on his cane, a rhythm as steady as a metronome. "And yet, Monsieur Duval, a witness places you near the aviary at 10 o'clock. A curious time for a stroll, no? The gardens, they are dark, the air cold. What drew you there?" Duval's smile flickered, like a candle caught in a draught, but he recovered swiftly. "A misunderstanding, I assure you. I did take a brief walk after dinner. My digestion, you understand, benefits from a turn in the fresh air. The gardens are lovely, even by moonlight, and the aviary's lights caught my eye. I passed by, nothing more. Lady Evelyn was inside, I presume, but I saw nothing untoward." Japp, standing by the desk, snorted softly. "A bit convenient, that. You just happened to wander past the very spot where a murder took place." Duval's eyes narrowed, though his smile remained. "Convenient, Inspector? Hardly. I am a guest here, a stranger to this house. Why should I wish harm to Lady Evelyn? My business is with birds, not bloodshed." Poirot leaned forward, his gaze piercing. "Your birds, Monsieur Duval? They are remarkable creatures, are they not? Capable of great intelligence, perhaps even trained to perform specific tasks." Duval laughed, a sound that rang a touch too loud in the quiet room. "You have a vivid imagination, Monsieur Poirot. My birds are trained to perch, to sing, to fetch small objects for their owner's amusement. But as instruments of murder, that is a flight of fancy even I could not conjure." Hastings, who had been silent, shifted in his chair. "All the same, Mr. Duval, it's odd you were near the aviary at all. Why not stick to the main paths? Seems like you were looking for something." Duval's expression tightened, though his voice remained smooth. "Captain Hastings, I am a man of curiosity. The aviary is a marvel. glass and iron, filled with creatures from distant lands. Is it so strange that I wished to see it, even from a distance?" Poirot's smile was faint, almost imperceptible. "Not strange, perhaps, but significant. Tell me, Monsieur Duval, what was your impression of Lady Evelyn? A woman of passion, yes, for her birds, and perhaps for other freedoms." Duval's fingers paused on the arm of his chair, a brief stillness that Poirot noted. "She was vibrant," he said carefully, "devoted to her collection, eager to learn of my work. She spoke of her birds with a love that was almost maternal. As for freedoms, I would not presume to know her mind. We spoke only of business." Japp flipped open his notebook, his tone sharp. "Business, eh? You're here to sell Sir Reginald a pair of macaws, I hear. Pricey ones, too. Any chance Lady Evelyn was against the deal? Maybe she said something that rubbed you the wrong way." Duval's laugh was softer now, tinged with irritation. "Inspector, you mistake me for a man with a temper. Lady Evelyn was enthusiastic about the macaws. She wished to see them trained, to add them to her aviary. If anything, she was my ally in the transaction." Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the faint edge in Duval's voice. "An ally, you say? And Sir Reginald, he was equally enthusiastic?" Duval hesitated, a fraction of a second too long. "Sir Reginald is a practical man. He values his collection, but is mindful of cost. We were still negotiating terms." Poirot nodded, as if satisfied, though his mind was far from settled. "Merci, Monsieur Duval. You have given us much to consider. For now, remain at the manor, if you please. The truth, it has a way of revealing itself in time." Duval rose, offering another bow, his smile returning like a mask slipping back into place. "Of course, Monsieur Poirot. I am at your disposal." As Duval left the library, his footsteps echoing down the corridor, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "He's slippery as an eel, Poirot. All that charm, it's like he's playing a part. Do you think he's involved?" Poirot's fingers resumed their tapping, his gaze distant. "Monsieur Duval, he is a man of surfaces. Polished, yes, but with depths unseen. His walk by the aviary, it is no accident. But whether he is a villain or merely a witness, that is the question." Japp closed his notebook with a snap. "I don't like him. Too smooth, too quick with his answers. And that business about the birds, could they really be trained to do something sinister?" Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "The birds, Inspector, they are more than ornaments. They see, they hear, they act. But as tools of murder, that requires a mind most cunning. We must return to the aviary to study its secrets." They stepped into the corridor, the drizzle outside now a steady patter against the windows. The manor seemed to close in around them, its opulence a facade for the tensions simmering beneath. Poirot's mind was a whirl of details: Duval's evasive charm, the cord's origin, Clara's fear, Sir Reginald's grief. Each was a thread in the tapestry of the crime, but the pattern remained elusive. The aviary, with its glass walls and vibrant inhabitants, held the key. He was certain of it. As they made their way toward the gardens, Poirot's little grey cells were already at work, arranging the clues with the precision of a master weaver, determined to unravel the mystery of Langston Manor. Chapter 5. The Locked Door. The drizzle had thickened into a steady rain by the time Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, and Inspector Japp reached the aviary, its glass dome glistening like a wet jewel against the sodden gardens of Langston Manor. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and foliage, and the distant rumble of thunder promised a storm. Poirot, shielded by a black umbrella held by Hastings, stepped carefully along the gravel path, his polished shoes avoiding the puddles with fastidious precision. The aviary loomed ahead, its iron framework intricate as lace, its interior a blur of colour from the exotic birds within. The scene of Lady Evelyn's death awaited them, a puzzle locked in glass and mystery. Inside, the aviary was a world apart, warm and humid, filled with the rustle of feathers and the sharp cries of parrots. The tiled floor, cleaned of blood, but still bearing the faint outline of where Lady Evelyn had fallen, gleamed under the soft light filtering through the rain-streaked glass. The silk cord, now in police custody, was absent, but its image lingered in Poirot's mind. Delicate, golden-threaded, a tool of beauty turned deadly. The champagne flute, shattered in the fall, had been collected as evidence, leaving only a faint stain on the tiles. The single brass key remained in the lock, its presence a silent challenge to the detective's intellect. Poirot approached the door, his gloved fingers tracing the frame with care. The lock was a simple pin and tumbler mechanism, sturdy but unremarkable, designed for security rather than complexity. The key, identical to Sir Reginald's duplicate, fit snugly, turning with a satisfying click when tested. Yet Poirot's eyes were drawn to the faint scratch on the doorframe, hairline mark no longer than a fingernail, just above the lock. He leaned closer, his monocle glinting as he examined it. "Curia," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the squawk of a nearby macaw. "This mark, it is not accidental. Something has passed here, something precise." Japp, wiping rain from his coat, frowned. "A scratch? Could be anything, Poirot. Birds, a clumsy servant, even Lady Evelyn herself." Poirot's moustache twitched. "No, mon ami. This is no careless mark. It is deliberate, purposeful. A clue, perhaps, to how the impossible was achieved." Hastings, holding the umbrella awkwardly in the confined space, peered over Poirot's shoulder. "You mean the locked door. But if the key was inside, and Sir Reginald used his duplicate to get in, how could the killer have escaped? Unless they had a third key." Poirot shook his head, his expression thoughtful. "A third key, Hastings. Possible, but unlikely. The simplicity of the lock, it suggests another method. The door was locked from the inside, yes, but the killer, they did not need to enter." Japp's brow furrowed. "Not enter? Then how the devil did they strangle her? That cord didn't tie itself around her neck." Poirot's eyes gleamed, a spark of insight dancing within them. "Précisément, Inspector. The cord, it is the key, not only to the murder, but to the method. Observe the aviary, its structure, its inhabitants. The answer, it lies here." He turned his attention to the interior, his gaze sweeping over the perches where birds fluttered and preened. A scarlet macaw, its feathers vibrant as flame, cocked its head and let out a piercing cry, as if mocking the humans below. Smaller birds, finches and lorikeets, darted between branches, their movements quick and erratic. A large cage in one corner, its door slightly ajar, caught Poirot's eye. He approached it, noting its intricate design, crafted to house a single bird, perhaps one of special significance. Inside, a single blue feather lay on the floor, its hue matching the one found near Lady Evelyn's body. "Mon Dieu," Poirot said softly, lifting the feather with a gloved hand. "This cage, it is not empty of secrets. Tell me, Inspector, have your men examined the birds themselves?" Japp scratched his chin, looking dubious. "The birds? They're just Birds, Poirot. Noisy, expensive ones, but hardly suspects. We checked the cages for anything hidden. Knives, poison, that sort of thing. But found nothing. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Nothing, you say? And yet, the birds, they are more than decoration. They are trained, non? Sir Reginald, he has spoken of their intelligence, their ability to perform tasks. Hastings, warming to the idea, stepped forward. You think a bird could be involved? I mean, they're clever, I'll grant you. Some can mimic speech, even open latches. But strangling someone? That's a bit far-fetched, isn't it? Poirot turned to the macaw, which had hopped closer, its black eyes fixed on him. Bonjour, petit oiseau, he said, his tone almost conversational. You have seen much, have you not? A crime, perhaps, enacted before your very eyes. The macaw squawked again, flapping its wings, and Japp let out a frustrated sigh. You're talking to birds now, Poirot. Next, you'll be asking them for a signed confession. Poirot chuckled, undeterred. Not a confession, Inspector, but a clue. The birds, they are witnesses in a way no human can be. They do not lie, they do not conceal, but they may carry out the will of another. He moved to the curtains framing the aviary's inner walls, their heavy silk tied back with cords identical to the murder weapon. Poirot examined one closely, noting its weave, strong yet flexible, with golden threads glinting in the light. This cord, he said, it is no ordinary tie. It is crafted for beauty, yes, but also for strength, a tool, perhaps, for more than decoration. Japp crossed his arms, his patience wearing thin. You're saying the killer used a bird to deliver the cord? That's madness, Poirot. How do you train a bird to strangle someone? Poirot's fingers traced the curtain cord, his mind racing. Not to strangle, Inspector, but to carry. The act of strangulation, it requires a human hand, or hands. But the delivery, the placement of the cord, that is where the bird may play its part. The scratch on the door frame, it suggests a passage, a movement of something small, precise. Hastings's eyes widened. You mean the killer was outside? They got the cord to Lady Evelyn without entering the aviary. Poirot nodded, his expression grave. It is possible, Hastings. The locked door. It is not a barrier, but a deception. The killer, they have used the aviary's own elements, its birds, its cords, its very structure, to create the illusion of an impossible crime. Japp shook his head, incredulous. I've seen some queer cases, but this takes the cake. If you're right, Poirot, we're looking for someone who knows these birds inside out. That points to Sir Reginald. He's the one who trains them. Poirot's gaze returned to the macaw, which had begun to preen its feathers, oblivious to the drama unfolding. Sir Reginald, yes, but we must not be hasty. The maid, Clara, she knows the aviary's routines. Monsieur Duval, he is an expert in birds. Each has a connection to this place, to its secrets. He stepped back from the cage, his mind arranging the clues like pieces of a mosaic. The scratch, the feather, the cord, the key, all pointed to a method both ingenious and diabolical. The aviary was no mere backdrop. It was the stage for a carefully orchestrated murder, and the birds, unwitting actors in a human tragedy. Inspector, Poirot said, turning to Japp. I ask that you examine the door frame further. Look for traces. Fibers, perhaps, or marks of wear. And the cage, the one with the feather. It must be studied closely. Its occupant, it may hold the key to our mystery. Japp nodded, though his expression was skeptical. "I'll have my men go over it with a fine-tooth comb. But I'm telling you, Poirot, if a bird's the culprit, I'm retiring." Poirot's laugh was soft, almost musical. "Not the culprit, mon ami, but the instrument, the mind behind this crime. It is human, and it is here, in Langston Manor." As they left the aviary, the rain now a steady drumbeat against the glass, Poirot's thoughts were a whirlwind of possibilities. The locked door was no longer a mystery, but a challenge, its solution hidden in the interplay of human cunning and avian instinct. Sir Reginald's grief, Clara's fear, Duval's evasions, each was a thread in the tapestry, but the pattern was emerging. Poirot's little grey cells, ever methodical, were closing in on the truth, step by careful step. Chapter 6. A Whisper of Motive. The rain had settled into a relentless patter, cloaking Langston Manor in a grey veil, as Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, and Inspector Japp gathered in the Manor's parlour for afternoon tea. The room was a haven of warmth, its walls papered in soft rose, adorned with delicate watercolours of pastoral scenes. A mahogany tea-table stood at the centre, laden with a silver service, delicate porcelain cups, and a tiered stand of scones and finger sandwiches. A fire roared in the grate, casting flickering shadows across the polished floorboards, but the comfort of the setting did little to ease the tension that hung in the air. Poirot sat in a cushioned armchair, his tisane steaming gently in its cup, his posture as impeccable as ever. Hastings, perched on a settee, stirred his tea absently, while Japp stood by the hearth, his hands clasped behind his back, his expression one of barely concealed impatience. The morning's discoveries in the aviary, the scratch on the doorframe, the blue feather, the silk cord's origin, had set Poirot's mind ablaze with possibilities. But he knew that facts alone were not enough. Murder, he often said, was a drama of the heart, and to unravel it, one must understand the players. Lady Evelyn Warrender, vibrant and restless, had been the centre of this tragedy, and her life, her desires, her conflicts held the key to her death. Poirot sipped his tisane, his green eyes thoughtful. "Inspector," he began, his voice calm but probing, "you have spoken with the staff, yes? What do they say of Lady Evelyn's life here at Langston Manor? Her habits, her entanglements?" Japp turned from the fire, his notebook already open. "Plenty of talk, Poirot, though not much that's solid. Lady Evelyn was a socialite, London parties, charity galas, the works, known for her charm and her sharp tongue. The staff say she was kind enough, but restless, always flitting about like one of her birds. Lately, though, there's been whispers of trouble, rows with Sir Reginald, talk of divorce." Poirot's eyebrows rose, a delicate arch of interest. "Divorce, you say? A matter most serious, for it threatens not only the heart, but the purse. What do we know of this?" Japp consulted his notes, his brow furrowing. "According to the butler, Mr. Grayson, Lady Evelyn's family money funded much of this estate. Her father was some shipping magnate. Sir Reginald brought the title and the land, but her fortune kept it running. A divorce would have meant splitting the assets, and word is Sir Reginald stood to lose half his wealth, maybe more. Grayson overheard them arguing about it a month ago, Lady Evelyn saying she wanted her freedom, Sir Reginald begging her to reconsider." Hastings set down his teacup with a clink, his face alight with interest. "That's motive, Poirot. If Sir Reginald was facing ruin, he might have done anything to keep her from leaving, even murder." Poirot's fingers tapped the arm of his chair, a rhythmic tick that betrayed the churning of his little grey cells. "Oui, Hastings, the motive, it is clear. But motive alone does not make a murderer. Sir Reginald, he is a man of pride, of position. To lose his wealth, his status, it is a blow to the soul. But we must also consider the others. The maid, Clara. She speaks of Lady Evelyn's desire to be free. What else do we know of her?" Japp flipped a page in his notebook. "Clara's been tight-lipped, but the cook, Mrs. Henshaw, says Lady Evelyn was generous with the staff, gave Clara a silk shawl last Christmas, even paid for a doctor when the gardener's boy was sick. But she was private about her troubles. Mrs. Henshaw heard her crying in the aviary once, a few weeks back, muttering about starting over. Didn't say with who or what." Poirot's gaze sharpened. "Starting over, a phrase most suggestive. Lady Evelyn, she was not content to remain in her gilded cage. Non? Perhaps she sought a new life, a new love." Hastings leaned forward, his voice low. "You think there was another man? That Duval fellow, maybe. He's got that French charm. Women like that sort of thing, don't they?" Poirot's smile was faint, almost indulgent. "Mon ami, you leap to romance like a schoolboy. Monsieur Duval, he is charming, yes, but his interest, it lies in birds, not hearts, or so he claims. We must learn more of his dealings with Lady Evelyn. Inspector, what of the guests, the visitors to this house?" Japp shrugged, his expression dour. "Not much to go on. Duval's the only guest here now, but Lady Evelyn had a circle in London. Society types, artists, the odd politician. Grayson says she'd come back from those trips looking brighter, like she'd found something to live for. Sir Reginald didn't always go with her, preferred his birds and his ledgers." Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the firelight. "A woman who seeks brightness outside her marriage. It is a dangerous thing. And dangerous things, they breed jealousy, resentment. We must consider all who stood to lose by her freedom. Sir Reginald, perhaps, but also others who knew her secrets." He set down his tisane, rising with a fluid grace to pace the room, his cane tapping lightly on the floor. "Let us reconstruct the lady's life. She is wealthy, beautiful, restless. She loves her birds, her aviary, but it is not enough. She speaks of freedom, of starting over. She argues with her husband, who fears the loss of his fortune. She welcomes a guest, Monsieur Duval, who brings birds but perhaps also questions. And Clara, the maid, she sees more than she says. The aviary, it is not only her sanctuary, it is her stage, where the final act was played." Japp crossed his arms, his voice gruff. "You're painting a pretty picture, Poirot, but it doesn't tell us who tied that cord around her neck. If Sir Reginald's the one with motive, why the devil go to all this trouble with a locked door and a bird? Why not just do it quietly in her sleep?" Poirot stopped pacing, his gaze distant. "Because, Inspector, the locked door, it is a statement. It is not enough to kill. It must be impossible, untraceable. The killer, they wish to be clever, to defy us. But Hercule Poirot, he is not so easily defied." Hastings, warming to the discussion, leaned back in his seat. "What about Clara, then? She's nervous as a cat, and she knew about the cord. Could she be covering for someone? Or maybe she's got her own reasons to want Lady Evelyn gone." Poirot nodded, his expression thoughtful. "The maid, she is a puzzle. Her loyalty to Lady Evelyn, it is genuine, yet her fear, it is specific. She knows something, perhaps of the cord's use, perhaps of a conversation overheard. We must press her gently, for fear can silence the truth. but it can also reveal it. Japp sighed, rubbing his temples. This is getting murkier by the minute. We've got a husband with a motive, a maid who's hiding something, and a Frenchman who's too slick for his own good. And don't tell me the birds are suspects, Poirot. I'm not ready for that. Poirot's laugh was soft, almost musical. Not suspects, mon ami, but witnesses. The birds, they see all, and they do not lie. Their role, it is not yet clear, but I am certain they are part of this drama. He returned to his chair, picking up his tisane and sipping it thoughtfully. Let us consider the timeline. Lady Evelyn is alive at 9, when Clara brings her champagne. By 10, Monsieur Duval is seen near the aviary, claiming a stroll. By 6 this morning, Sir Reginald finds her dead, the door locked, the key inside. The cord, it comes from the aviary itself, a detail the killer did not hide. Why? Because they wished us to look there, to see the impossible. Hastings frowned, his teacup forgotten. You're saying the killer wanted us to notice the cord. That's bold, isn't it? Bold, yes, Poirot said, but also arrogant. The killer, they believe themselves untouchable, protected by the locked door and the mystery of the method. But arrogance, it is the Achilles heel of the criminal mind. Japp snapped his notebook shut, his patience fraying. Right then. What's next? We've got no fingerprints, no witnesses, except maybe your precious birds, and a house full of people who aren't talking straight. Do we haul Clara in for another round, or go after Duval? Poirot's eyes narrowed, his mind a whirl of connections. For now, we observe. The aviary, it must be searched again. Not for objects, but for signs of the bird's behavior. And Clara, she must be watched. Her fear, it will lead us to the truth. As for Monsieur Duval, his charm, it is a shield. But shields can be pierced. He rose, adjusting his lapel with a precise gesture. Come, mes amis. The rain, it will not deter Hercule Poirot. To the aviary once more, where the secrets of Langston Manor await. As they stepped into the corridor, the fire's warmth fading behind them, the manor seemed to pulse with unspoken truths. The parlour, with its delicate teacups and polite conversation, had revealed the undercurrents of Lady Evelyn's life, her discontent, her dreams, her enemies. Poirot's little grey cells were weaving the threads together, each motive a strand in the tapestry of murder. The aviary, with its locked door and silent witnesses, held the final piece, and Poirot was determined to find it. Rain or no rain. Chapter 7. The Bird's Clue. The rain had intensified, drumming a steady rhythm against the glass dome of the aviary, as Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, and Inspector Japp stepped inside, shaking droplets from their coats. The air within was thick with humidity, scented with the earthy musk of feathers and the faint sweetness of tropical blooms that lined the aviary's edges. The birds, undeterred by the storm outside, filled the space with a cacophony of squawks and trills, their vibrant plumage a stark contrast to the grim purpose of the trio's visit. Poirot, his umbrella now folded and tucked under his arm, surveyed the scene with a gaze as sharp as a blade, his little grey cells humming with the weight of the clues accumulated thus far. The tiled floor, scrubbed clean by the police, bore no trace of Lady Evelyn's tragic end, save for the faint outline where her body had lain. The silk cord, the shattered champagne flute, and the single blue feather found near her hand were now in Scotland Yard's custody, but their absence did little to diminish the aviary's air of mystery. The brass key remained in the lock, its presence a taunting reminder of the locked room puzzle. The faint scratch on the door frame, noted earlier, gleamed faintly in the diffused light, a silent witness to an unseen act. Poirot moved with deliberate care, his polished shoes clicking softly on the tiles as he approached the large cage in the corner, the one that had caught his eye before. Its door hung slightly ajar, its intricate ironwork designed to house a single bird of particular value. Inside, on the cage's floor, lay another blue feather, its hue an exact match to the one found near Lady Evelyn's body. Beside it, almost invisible against the cage's base, was a tiny loop of silk cord, no larger than a child's bracelet, its golden threads glinting faintly. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured, kneeling to examine the find, his gloved fingers hovering over the cord without touching it. This is no coincidence. The feather, the cord, they are siblings to the instruments of death. This cage, it holds a secret most profound. Hastings, peering over Poirot's shoulder, frowned. Another cord? It's tiny, Poirot. Hardly big enough to strangle anyone. And that feather? Do you think it's from the same bird? Poirot's eyes gleamed, catching the light like polished jade. Précisément, Hastings. The feather, it is a signature, left by a creature trained for a purpose. And this cord, small though it tells us much. It is a practice piece, perhaps, or a remnant of the killer's preparation. Japp, standing near the door, scratched his head, his expression a mix of skepticism and intrigue. A practice piece? You're saying someone trained a bird to carry a cord like that? It's clever, I'll give you that. But it sounds like something out of a penny dreadful. Poirot rose, brushing imaginary dust from his knees. Not so fantastical, Inspector. The birds of this aviary, they are not mere ornaments. They are trained. By Sir Reginald, by Lady Evelyn, perhaps by another. A bird, it can carry a ring, a key, a cord. With patience, it can be taught to deliver such a thing through a gap, to a precise place. He gestured to the door frame, where the scratch marked the wood. Observe, mes amis. This mark, it is not random. It is the trace of a cord, pulled through a narrow space. Perhaps a gap above the door, where the frame meets the glass. The killer, they did not enter, but their instrument, it did. Hastings' eyes widened, his voice tinged with awe. You mean the bird carried the cord to Lady Evelyn? But how could it strangle her? It takes strength to do that, not just a beak. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Not to strangle, Hastings, but to deliver. The cord, it was placed around her neck, perhaps as she slept or was distracted by her champagne. The killer, standing outside, pulled it tight, using the doorframe as leverage. The bird, it was merely the messenger. Japp's jaw tightened, his skepticism warring with the logic of Poirot's theory. It's ingenious, I'll grant you, but it's also barking mad. You'd need a bird trained to a hair's breadth and a killer with nerves of steel. Who in this house could pull that off? Poirot turned to the scarlet macaw perched nearby, its black eyes glinting with an intelligence that seemed almost humain. Bonjour, petit oiseau, he said softly, as if addressing an old friend. You have carried a burden, have you not? A cord, a secret, delivered in the night. The macaw tilted its head, letting out a sharp squawk that echoed in the glass enclosure. Poirot's gaze lingered on it, then shifted to the other birds, finches darting in flashes of colour, a cockatoo preening its snowy feathers. We must know more of these creatures, he said. Their habits, their training. Inspector, have your men questioned the staff about the bird's care? Japp nodded, flipping open his notebook. "Aye, we've asked around. Sir Reginald's the main one for training. Spends hours in here, teaching them tricks. Lady Evelyn was more about feeding and fussing over them. But Clara, the maid, helps with cleaning the cages. She's the one who mentioned Sir Reginald training the macaw to carry small objects, rings, bits of cloth, that sort of thing." Poirot's eyebrows rose, a spark of interest igniting. "Clara, again. She is a thread that weaves through this mystery. Summon her, if you please, Inspector. We must know more of this training." Japp signalled to a constable stationed outside, who hurried off to fetch the maid. While they waited, Poirot moved to the curtains, their silk folds tied back with cords identical to the murder weapon. He examined one closely, noting its strength, its flexibility, the way the golden threads caught the light. "These cords," he said, "they are not merely decorative. They are tools, chosen with care. The killer, they knew the aviary's every detail." Hastings, still grappling with the idea, shook his head. "It's devilishly clever, Poirot. But why go to such lengths? Why not just sneak in and do it quietly?" Poirot's fingers traced the curtain cord, his voice low. "Because, mon ami, the killer wished to be unseen, unsuspected. The locked door, the bird, the cord, they are a performance, designed to baffle. But every performance has its flaws, and Hercule Poirot, he will find them." Clara Dobbs appeared at the aviary's entrance, her thin frame dwarfed by the towering glass walls. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with apprehension, as she curtsied awkwardly. "You sent for me, sir," she said, her voice trembling. Poirot's tone was gentle, almost soothing. "Oui, mademoiselle. Do not be afraid. We seek only the truth. This cage," he gestured to the one with the feather and cord. "Who tended it? Who cared for its occupant?" Clara's hands twisted in her apron, her gaze darting to the cage. That's the macaw's cage, sir. The scarlet one, there." She pointed to the bird, now preening on a nearby perch. "Sir Reginald, he's the one who looks after it most. Trains it special, he does. Says it's the cleverest bird he's ever had." Poirot's eyes narrowed, though his smile remained kind. "And this training, mademoiselle, what does it entail? The carrying of objects, perhaps? A cord, like this one?" He held up the sketch of the murder weapon, watching her reaction. Clara's breath hitched, her cheeks flushing. I've seen him teach it to carry things, sir. Rings, bits of ribbon, small weights. He'd hold them up, make the bird take them in its beak, fly to a perch, and drop them. But I never saw it carry anything like that." Her voice faltered, her eyes dropping to the floor. Poirot stepped closer, his voice soft but insistent. "And Lady Evelyn, she knew of this training. She approved." Clara nodded, her fingers tightening on her apron. "She loved watching the birds learn, sir. She'd laugh when the macaw did its tricks, but she didn't train them herself. That was Sir Reginald's work." Poirot's gaze softened, but his mind was relentless. "Merci, mademoiselle. You have been most helpful. You may go, but stay within the manor, s'il vous plaît." As Clara hurried away, her footsteps echoing in the rain, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. "She's terrified, Poirot. Knows more than she's saying, I'd wager. Do you think she saw Sir Reginald training the bird for this?" Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, his expression thoughtful. "Perhaps, Hastings. Clara, she is loyal. But to whom? To Lady Evelyn, whose kindness she cherished, to Sir Reginald, whose authority she fears, or to her own secrets? The bird, it is the key. but the hand that trained it, that is the hand of the killer. Japp closed his notebook with a snap, his voice gruff. Right then, if the macaw's involved, we need to know everything about its training. I'll have my men dig into Sir Reginald's habits. Any records, notes, anything about this bird. But I'm telling you, Poirot, if we pin this on a parrot, I'll never hear the end of it at the Yard. Poirot's laugh was a soft chime in the humid air. Not a parrot, Inspector, but a partner. The killer. They are human, and they are here, in this house. The bird, it merely played its part. As they stepped back into the rain, the aviary's glass walls reflecting the storm's fury, Poirot's mind was a whirl of connections. The feather, the cord, the scratch, the macaw's training, all pointed to a method both ingenious and cruel. The killer had used the aviary's own elements to craft an impossible crime, but Poirot, with his unerring instinct for order, was closing in. The truth, he knew, was near, hidden in the flutter of wings and the shadows of Langston Manor. Chapter 8. The Duplicate Key. The storm had settled into a brooding presence over Langston Manor, its heavy clouds casting the study of Sir Reginald Warrender in a dim, oppressive light. The room was a bastion of masculine elegance, its walls panelled in dark oak, lined with shelves of leather-bound ledgers and hunting trophies. A stag's head, a boar's tusk, relics of a prouder past. A massive desk dominated the space, its surface cluttered with papers, an inkstand, and a small bronze statuette of a falcon, its eyes glinting in the flicker of a single lamp. The air carried the faint scent of cigar smoke and old wood, undercut by the damp chill seeping through the leaded windows. Hercule Poirot stood near the desk, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his posture as precise as ever. Captain Hastings sat in a leather armchair, his expression a mix of anticipation and unease, while Inspector Japp paced near the fireplace, his boots scuffing the polished floor. Sir Reginald Warrender sat behind the desk, his broad frame slumped, his face a mask of exhaustion and defiance. The brandy glass from their earlier meeting was gone, replaced by a tumbler of water, untouched, its surface catching the lamplight. His morning coat was still impeccable, but his eyes, red-rimmed and hollow, betrayed a man teetering on the edge of collapse. The revelations of the aviary, the blue feather, the tiny loop of cord, the macaw's training, had brought Poirot to this moment, his little grey cells weaving the threads of evidence into a pattern that pointed inexorably to the man before him. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was calm but unrelenting, like a tide eroding a cliff. Sir Reginald, the time for half-truths, it is past. The aviary, it has spoken to Hercule Poirot, and its secrets, they are no longer hidden. You trained the macaw, did you not? To carry a cord, to deliver it through the doorframe, to place it around your wife's neck. And then, with your duplicate key, you locked the door, creating the illusion of an impossible crime. Sir Reginald's face drained of colour, his hands gripping the desk's edge as if to anchor himself. "That's preposterous," he said, his voice hoarse but sharp with indignation. "You accuse me of murdering my own wife with a bird? It's madness, Monsieur Poirot. I loved Evelyn." Poirot's eyes narrowed, his gaze piercing through the man's protestations. "Love, Sir Reginald. It is a word much used, but often it conceals darker truths. The cord, it came from the aviary's curtains, your domain, where you spent hours training your birds. The scratch on the doorframe, it marks the passage of that cord, pulled tight from outside. The macaw, your cleverest pupil, It carried the cord to Lady Evelyn, distracted perhaps by her champagne or her trust in her sanctuary. And you, with your duplicate key, ensured the door was locked, the key inside, to baffle us all. Reginald stood, his chair scraping against the floor, his hands trembling with fury. You have no proof. This is conjecture, nothing more. I found Evelyn dead, yes, but I had no part in it. I used my key to enter, as I told you. The original was in the lock. How could I have done what you claim? Japp stepped forward, his voice firm but measured. Easy, Sir Reginald. We're not here to sling accusations without evidence. But that bird, that cord, they're pointing your way. You trained the macaw, didn't you? Clara says you spent hours with it, teaching it tricks. Reginald's jaw tightened, his eyes darting to the window, where rain streaked the glass like tears. Yes, I trained the macaw, he admitted, his voice low. It's clever. Could carry a ring, a ribbon, even a small key. Evelyn loved watching it perform. But to use it to kill her, that's grotesque. I'd never harm her. Poirot tilted his head, his moustache twitching faintly. And yet, Sir Reginald, the motive, it is clear. Lady Evelyn, she spoke of divorce, of freedom. Her fortune, it sustained this estate, your life, your position. To lose her, it was to lose everything. A man, when faced with ruin, may act in ways he never imagined. Reginald's hands clenched into fists, his voice rising. You think I'd kill her for money? I begged her to stay, yes, because I loved her. She was restless, always chasing some new thrill. London, her parties, her dreams of starting over. But I never stopped hoping she'd come back to me. Hastings, unable to stay silent, leaned forward. But if she was set on leaving, Sir Reginald, what then? A divorce would have ruined you. Half the estate, maybe more, gone. That's enough to push any man to desperation. Reginald's eyes flashed with anger, but there was a flicker of something else. Fear, perhaps, or guilt. I won't deny we argued, he said, his voice breaking. She wanted to leave, to travel, to find herself. I told her it would destroy us, financially, yes, but more than that. This manor, it's my family's legacy. I couldn't let it crumble. Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, a rhythmic pulse that seemed to echo the ticking of the study's Ormolu clock. And so, Sir Reginald, you devised a plan. The aviary, it was her sanctuary, but also yours. You knew its every detail, the cords, the birds, the lock. You trained the macaw to carry a cord through the gap above the door, to place it around her neck as she stood near the table, perhaps admiring her birds. You pulled the cord tight, using the doorframe to hide your presence. Then, with your duplicate key, you entered, ensured the original was in the lock, and left, locking the door behind you. A crime impossible, yet perfectly executed. Reginald sank back into his chair, his face ashen. You weave a fine tale, Monsieur Poirot, but it's fantasy. I was in my study all evening, after dinner. I didn't go near the aviary until morning. Ask Clara. She brought me tea at 10. Poirot's smile was thin, unyielding. Clara, she is loyal. But her fear, it betrays her. She knows of your training, of the macaw's tricks. She has seen the cords, perhaps even the practice piece we found in the cage. The little grey cells, Sir Reginald, they do not lie. The scratch on the doorframe, it is the mark of your method. The feather, it is the signature of your instrument. Japp, sensing the tension, stepped closer, his hand resting lightly on his notebook. If you've got something to say, Sir Reginald, now's the time. That bird, that cord, they're not just coincidences. And Clara's story about the tea, it doesn't clear you. You could have slipped out after. Reginald's hands covered his face, his voice muffled. I didn't kill her. I swear it. Evelyn was everything. Yes, I feared losing her, losing all this. He gestured to the room, the manor beyond. But murder? I couldn't. Poirot's gaze softened, but only slightly. The heart, it is a labyrinth, Sir Reginald. Sometimes it leads us to places we cannot imagine. If you are innocent, then help us. Who else knew of the macaw's training? Who else had access to the aviary's cords? Reginald lowered his hands, his eyes haunted. Only Evelyn and I spent time in the aviary. Clara cleaned it, but she didn't touch the birds. Duval, he's an expert, brought us new birds, but I never showed him the training. It was my private joy. Poirot nodded, filing the detail away. And Monsieur Duval, he was near the aviary at 10. Did you see him, Sir Reginald? Did you hear anything from your study? Reginald shook his head, his voice barely a whisper. Nothing. I was working on accounts, lost in my thoughts. The storm was brewing. I heard the wind. Nothing more. Poirot stepped back, his expression unreadable. Merci, Sir Reginald. For now we leave you to your reflections. But the truth, it will not wait forever. As they left the study, the rain a steady drumbeat against the windows, Hastings turned to Poirot, his voice low. He's crumbling, Poirot. That story about the accounts, it's flimsy. And the way he talks about Evelyn, it's almost too perfect, like he's rehearsing. Japp nodded, his face grim. He's got motive, means, and opportunity. That macaw, the cord, it's all pointing to him. But we need more than your grey cells, Poirot. We need hard evidence. Poirot's smile was faint, almost melancholy. Evidence, Inspector. It is there, in the aviary, in the manor, in the hearts of those who dwell here. The duplicate key. It is not only a tool, but a symbol of access, of betrayal. We must watch Clara, questioned Duval further. The truth, it is close, but it hides in the shadows. They stepped into the corridor, the manor's grandeur now a hollow shell, its walls echoing with secrets. Poirot's mind was a whirl of connections, the macaw's training, the cord's passage, the locked door's deception. Sir Reginald's denials were fervent, but the evidence was mounting, and Poirot, with his unerring instinct for order, knew the final act was near. Chapter 9. The Confession. The library of Langston Manor, with its towering shelves and heavy air of aged leather, seemed to close in around Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, and Inspector Japp as they stood once more in its shadowed embrace. The rain had ceased, leaving a damp chill that seeped through the leaded windows, where the late afternoon light cast a pallid glow across the room. The fire in the grate had dwindled to embers, and the faint creak of the manor's ancient timbers punctuated the silence. Poirot stood near the oak desk, his gloved hands clasped behind his back, his green eyes fixed on Sir Reginald Warrender with an intensity that seemed to pierce the very soul. Hastings leaned against a bookcase, his arms crossed, his face a mix of anticipation and unease. Japp, ever the pragmatist, stood by the door, his notebook at the ready, his expression one of grim determination. Sir Reginald sat in the same leather armchair where they had first questioned Victor Duval. But the man who faced them now was a shadow of the proud baronet they had met hours before. His shoulders were slumped, his hands trembling as they rested on his knees, his grey eyes haunted by a fear that no amount of bluster could conceal. The weight of Poirot's accusations, the macaw, the cord, the duplicate key, had eroded his defences, leaving him exposed, vulnerable, a man on the brink of surrender. Poirot's voice, when he spoke, was soft but unyielding, a velvet glove over an iron fist. Sir Reginald, the hour for pretense, it is over. The aviary, it has revealed its secrets to Hercule Poirot. The macaw, trained by your hand, carried the cord through the gap above the door. You, standing outside, pulled it tight, ending the life of Lady Evelyn. Then, with your duplicate key, you entered, placed the original in the lock, and left, sealing the illusion of an impossible crime. Deny it no longer, mon ami. The truth, it demands to be heard. Reginald's head snapped up, his face ashen, his lips parting as if to protest. But the words seemed to catch in his throat, and he slumped further, his hands rising to cover his face. A low, guttural sound escaped him. A sob, perhaps, or a groan of despair. You cannot know, he whispered, his voice barely audible. It's impossible. I loved her. Poirot stepped closer, his cane tapping lightly on the carpet, his gaze unwavering. Love, Sir Reginald. It is a complex tapestry, woven with threads of devotion and desperation. You loved Lady Evelyn, oui, but you feared her departure more, her talk of divorce, of freedom. It threatened not only your heart, but your world. The estate, your legacy, your very name, all rested on her fortune. To lose her was to lose everything. Reginald's hands dropped, revealing eyes red with unshed tears. You're right about the money, he said, his voice breaking. Evelyn's fortune kept this place alive. Without it, I'd have been ruined, forced to sell the manor, to watch my family's name crumble. She didn't understand, didn't care. She wanted to leave, to travel, to live some reckless life in London or abroad. I begged her to stay, to think of what we'd built together. But she was relentless. Hastings, his voice low but firm, interjected, So you killed her? To keep the money, the manor? That's cold, Sir Reginald, even for a man facing ruin. Reginald's eyes flashed with a flicker of defiance, but it faded quickly. It wasn't just the money, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. It was her betrayal. I heard the whispers, her trips to London, her friends, her laughter that wasn't for me anymore. I couldn't let her destroy me, destroy us. Japp, his patience thinning, stepped forward, his notebook open. So you admit it? You trained that bird to carry the cord, used it to strangle her, and locked the door to cover your tracks. Reginald's head bowed, his shoulders shaking. The silence stretched, taut as a wire, until he spoke, his voice a broken thread. Yes, he whispered. God help me, yes. I couldn't lose her, couldn't lose everything. I trained the macaw over months, small cords, ribbons, weights. It was a game at first, something to amuse Evelyn. But when she spoke of divorce, when I saw the papers her lawyer sent, I saw a way. Poirot's expression remained impassive, though his eyes gleamed with the quiet triumph of truth unveiled. Tell us, Sir Reginald, how it was done. The method, it is ingenious, but it must be known. Reginald swallowed, his hands clenching into fists. It was the night of the dinner with Duval. Evelyn went to the aviary, as she always did. I knew she'd be there, alone, with her champagne. I trained the macaw to fly to her perch by the table, carrying the cord through the gap above the door, a narrow slit where the frame wasn't flush. I stood outside in the dark, and when the bird placed the cord around her neck, she was distracted, humming to herself. I pulled it tight. It was quick, merciful, I thought. Then I used my key, entered, put her key back in the lock, and left. The storm covered any sounds. Hastings shook his head, his voice thick with disbelief. Merciful? You strangled your wife with a bird's help, and you call it merciful? That's monstrous, Sir Reginald. Reginald's eyes closed, a tear escaping down his cheek. I didn't want to hurt her. I couldn't let her go. I thought, with the door locked, no one would suspect. The bird, it was just a tool, not a killer. Japp snapped his notebook shut, his face grim. That's enough for me. Sir Reginald Warrender, I'm arresting you for the murder of Lady Evelyn Warrender. You'll come with us, and we'll sort the rest at the station. He signalled to the constable at the door, who stepped forward with handcuffs. Reginald rose, his movements slow, mechanical, as if the life had drained from him. The cuffs clicked shut, a cold final sound in the quiet library. Poirot watched, his expression unreadable, as Reginald was led away. The heart, it is a labyrinth, he said softly, almost to himself. Greed, fear, love, they twist together, and a man becomes a stranger to himself. Hastings, still shaken, turned to Poirot. It's incredible, Poirot. A bird as a murder weapon. Only you could have pieced that together. But Clara, did she know? She was so nervous, always dodging questions. Poirot's fingers tapped his cane, a familiar rhythm. Clara, she suspected perhaps. She knew of the macaws' training, saw the cords. Her fear, it was not of guilt, but of betrayal. She loved Lady Evelyn, yet served Sir Reginald. To speak would have broken her loyalty to both. Japp, adjusting his hat, grunted. Well, it's a clean case now, thanks to you, Poirot. Though I'll never live this down at the Yard. A parrot as an accomplice. What's next? A murderous canary? Poirot's laugh was soft, a chime in the heavy air. Not a parrot, Inspector, but a macaw, and not an accomplice, but a pawn. The mind behind the crime. It was human, and it was here, in this house of shadows. As they stepped into the corridor, the manor seemed quieter, its secrets laid bare. The library, with its books and fading fire, held no more answers. Poirot's mind, however, was not yet at rest. A final visit to the aviary was needed, to bid farewell to the silent witnesses who had played their part in unravelling the truth. Chapter 10. The Final Note. The rain had ceased, leaving the gardens of Langston Manor cloaked in a glistening sheen, the air fresh with the scent of wet grass and earth. The late afternoon sun broke through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the aviary's glass dome, transforming it into a beacon amidst the sodden landscape. Hercule Poirot, Captain Hastings, and Inspector Japp made their way along the gravel path, their footsteps crunching softly, the weight of Sir Reginald's confession still heavy in the air. The manor behind them seemed to exhale, its secrets unburdened. Yet the aviary beckoned for one final visit, a closing act in the drama of Lady Evelyn's murder. Inside, the aviary was a symphony of life, its vibrant inhabitants undeterred by the human tragedy that had unfolded within its walls. The scarlet macaw, its feathers a blaze of crimson and sapphire, perched on a gnarled branch, its black eyes glinting with an intelligence that seemed almost knowing. Finches darted in flashes of emerald and gold, their chirps mingling with the deeper calls of a cockatoo preening nearby. The tiled floor, now pristine, bore no trace of the crime, but the memory of Lady Evelyn's crumpled form lingered in Poirot's mind, a shadow cast by the truth he had uncovered. Poirot stood near the centre of the aviary, his cane resting lightly in his gloved hands, his gaze fixed on the macaw. The bird tilted its head, letting out a sharp squawk that echoed in the glass enclosure, as if acknowledging the detective's presence. "Pauvre oiseau," Poirot said softly, his voice a gentle murmur. "You were but a tool in a wicked game, trained to carry. A cord to deliver death without malice. Your innocence, it is untouched, yet you have played a part in tragedy." Hastings, standing by a cluster of tropical ferns, shook his head, his expression a mix of awe and disbelief. "It's still hard to fathom, Poirot. A bird, of all things, used to commit murder. Only you could have seen through such a scheme. The locked door, the cord, the macaw. It's like something out of a novel." Poirot's smile was faint, tinged with melancholy. "The mind of the criminal, Hastings. It is a novel of its own, written in shadows and deceit. Sir Reginald, he crafted a plot most ingenious, but he forgot the first rule of crime. No plan is perfect when faced with the order and method of Hercule Poirot." Japp, inspecting the doorframe where the telltale scratch had been found, grunted in agreement. "You've done it again, Poirot. Wrapped this one up neat as a pin. Sir Reginald's confession seals it. Motive, method, opportunity, all laid out. Though I'll be the laughingstock of Scotland Yard when they hear about that bird." Poirot's eyes twinkled, a rare spark of amusement breaking through his solemnity. "Let them laugh, Inspector. The truth, it is no less true for being extraordinary. The macaw, it was merely an extension of Sir Reginald's will, a pawn in his desperate bid to preserve his world." He moved to the cage in the corner, where the tiny loop of silk cord and the blue feather had been discovered, now in police custody. The cage stood empty, its door still ajar, a silent testament to the macaw's role. Poirot's fingers traced the ironwork, his mind replaying the sequence of events. The cord carried through the gap, the pull from outside, the locked door sealed with a duplicate key. It was a masterpiece of misdirection, yet it had crumbled under the relentless logic of his little grey cells. Hastings, warming to the conversation, stepped closer. "What about Clara, Poirot? She knew about the macaw's training, didn't she? Was she protecting Sir Reginald all along?" Poirot nodded, his gaze distant. "Clara, she is a soul divided. Her loyalty to Lady Evelyn was genuine, her affection deep. Yet she served Sir Reginald, lived under his roof, feared his authority. She saw the macaw's tricks, perhaps suspected their purpose, but to speak would have been to betray both her mistress and her master. Her silence, it was born of conflict, not complicity." Japp, closing his notebook, sighed. "Poor girl, caught in the middle of this mess. And Duval, what's his part? Just a bystander with bad timing?" Poirot's lips curved slightly. "Monsieur Duval, he is a man of opportunity, not murder. His presence near the aviary, it was curiosity, perhaps, or a desire to ingratiate himself with Lady Evelyn. His charm, it is a tool of trade, not treachery. The birds he brought, they were his business, not his weapon." The macaw squawked again, flapping its wings, and Poirot turned to it, his expression softening. "You, petit oiseau, you have played your part and revealed the truth. Your master, he sought to cage you, as he caged his wife. But freedom, it cannot be bound forever." He turned to his companions, his voice firm but reflective. "The Gilded Cage, mes amis, it is not only for birds. Lady Evelyn, she sought to break free, to soar beyond the constraints of wealth and marriage. Sir Reginald, he built a cage of his own. Fear, greed, desperation, and it trapped him in the end. The aviary. It was their stage, their battleground, and their tragedy. Japp adjusted his hat, his face a mix of relief and exhaustion. Well, it's done now. Sir Reginald's in custody, and we've got enough to make the charge stick. Time to wrap this up and get out of this damp pile. Hastings nodded, but his eyes lingered on Poirot. You've got a way of seeing things, Poirot. The rest of us were stumbling in the dark. But you saw the light. Scratch, feather and all. Poirot's smile was modest, though his eyes betrayed a quiet pride. The light, Hastings, it is always there, hidden in the details. The little grey cells, they arrange the chaos into order. And the truth, it emerges like a star from the night. They stepped out of the aviary, the golden light fading as the sun dipped behind the clouds. The manor loomed behind them, its grandeur now tinged with melancholy, a house that had witnessed love and loss in equal measure. Poirot paused on the path, his gaze lingering on the glass dome. A final farewell to the scene of his triumph. Come, mes amis, he said, adjusting his hat with a precise gesture. The work of Hercule Poirot. It is complete. Let us leave Langstone Manor to its ghosts and its birds. As they walked toward the waiting car, the macaw's final squawk echoed behind them, a note of defiance in a world restored to order. The case of the Gilded Cage was closed, but its echoes would linger in Poirot's mind, a reminder that even the most beautiful prisons could not hold the truth.